which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Mindy Fletcher. Alderman John Gibson.
Here.
Alderman Jim Gill.
Yep.
Alderman Stephen McLean.
Here.
Alderman Darby Patrick.
Here.
Vice Mayor Teresa Mock.
Here.
Mayor Pat Stillwell.
Here.
All are present.
I've got 2 or 3 things here. If our guys would come in that's employee of the month, please, all of you. We didn't get to have our meeting last month because of COVID. And Shane, come over here first. Month before last, we got into a discussion, and I forgot all about this. This is Shane Monk Day, right? And he was the city, as far as the employee of the month, 2 months ago, right? And so I appreciate you, and he works at Public Works. He's out here mowing yards and getting hot in the summer, and in the winter time, he's out there doing the same thing, getting cold in the winter. So I think, well done. Give him a hand, please. Last month, Johnny Castle was supposed to have had it. And Johnny works up at the sewer. And Johnny has had a bad case of COVID and been in a hospital. He needs your prayers still. And so he's home now, but he's on oxygen. And he's been with us 38 years. Now that's a record, but if you can stay in this town 38 years and work for these boards, then you know I appreciate it. All right, and then not Shane, I done got Shane. Alan, come here. This is Alan Bradshaw, and he does everything that he has to do, don't you? You have to listen to Johnny all the time, and all these other people all the time. And he's the same one. He's out mowing, he's out picking up trash, he's up and down the road in the winter. He's, when you're in the bed asleep, this man's one that comes and helps scrape. So, this is Alan Bradshaw, and if you, do you have can you get his picture?
Yes.
For this month? There you go, I'll hold that. And thank you so much for all you do. Before we get started, I would like to congratulate the police officers, all of them. There's several back there. You might not know this, but we're the number 3rd city in the state to have the safest city. Now that should tell you something. Thanks, guys. Okay, we have next, and I want to welcome all of you all for coming too. Next, we have the approval and corrections of the minutes of the board alderman, board mayor and alderman on July the 22nd, 21, and the committee and department reports. Any reports, department? Anybody have a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, now, the approve of the monthly financial report for July the 21st. Do I have any discussion? Do I have a second? I second it. Approve the monthly. All in favor, say aye. Anybody got disapprove? Okay, then, we have, the approval of the monthly financial report of August the 21st. Do I have any discussions? Any questions? Okay, do I have a, do I have a second? Okay. Now, we're going, we need to vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? I always leave that out every time. So they just go double So anyway, do we have, we're gonna have, now, a visitor's comment, and you will have 3 minutes for your presentation. And, the board will not be, any part of the discussion. And so, we will bring it up the next meeting if you need anything brought up. Okay, so do I have anybody that wants to, comment? Okay, back in the back.
You go ahead. Go ahead.
State your name and, where you live, please.
It's Jim Bayer, B-A-R-E. I live at 305 Independence. Y'all should have received a 3-page letter on your desk that I asked to be put there. I asked that that be put in the records along with my statement tonight. This agenda tonight has nothing to do with moving this town forward. It has nothing to do with anything except personal vendetta against our city manager. This board has wasted a lot of money with these witch hunts. Time and time again, our city manager has been on the chopping block for no other reason than for personal vendettas. Since the election, this board has really not done much to move this town forward because of this witch hunt. And there's a few of the board of mayor and aldermen that has chosen to do so. Get rid of our city manager, you have signed the death warrant for Mount Carmel. Instead of going forward to the future, you have sent. I ask that the aldermen resign their seats if they choose to go down that path. Thank you.
Do you have any other, would you raise your hand? Would you please stand? State your name, where you live.
My name is Ray Jesse. I live 531 Poplar Street. For the past 3 years, our city manager has been treated like dirt. We have aldermen on this board whose only personal agenda is to get rid of the city manager. I've lived here for 49 years, and our town has progressed more with Mike Housewright as manager than at any other manager that we have had. Do some of you on this board think that you could actually run this town on a daily basis? Some of you don't even know how to run a meeting. Who in their right mind would want to come into this town as a manager or any other managerial position knowing that Mount Carmel's past history? We should be proud of our city manager and the good job he's doing without these monthly distractions. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Honorable Mr. Garvey, Honorable Mr. Lane, Honorable Mr. Gibson, Honorable Mrs. Monk, Honorable Mrs. Pat Stilwell Mayor, Honorable Mrs. Fletcher, Honorable Mr. Gillum, Honorable Mr. Peavy, Honorable Mr. Housewright. Thank you for giving me 3 minutes of your time to discuss things, and I appreciate you reaching all. I investigated about the trading place where the Army Depot is, up in Hall, and the seal keeps getting delayed more and more and more. And you know, as you go from the interstate into Mount Carmel, you have the right of way, and there's been as many as 15, 16 cars backed up there, and now they're taking a chance going around parked vehicles because of the red light taking so long, and taking a chance of going head on around pork chop, a car that has the right of way going this way. And I checked with the Department of Transportation, and everyone says it's your call. And then we don't know, hot seat, nothing. Mayor, they say, it's up to you, I don't know. That's what they say, I guess they're passing the buck to you, I don't know. I just know it's a problem, and I feel like a second-class citizen waiting on this traffic light when it used to. It was a lot faster. I just like for it to be fair. And then also, I'd like to see possibility if there's a chance of, you know, if there's government property in the township or close by, I'd like to see a natural spring maybe developed. It's already there where you can get fresh water instead of having to buy it at the supermarket. Just the idea, or maybe if you had the equipment, make it to a pond, have trout and fish for adults fish and clean running water too, right? We have the ecological, President Biden.
Time's up.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
ma'am. I'm sorry if I was intrusive, I didn't mean to be rude.
No, you're not rude, you're fine.
Thank you.
And it's not my call anyway, it's the man sitting right there, because he is the city manager and doing a wonderful job.
Should I say something? I don't wanna be rude. That's just what they told me. And you know how things go when you're just one citizen, only one voice.
You're right.
Thank you,
Okay,
Alderman
do I
Mayor.
have
I
anybody?
apologize.
Okay, thank you, you don't need to apologize. Anybody, all right, ma'am, you stand up, state your name.
My name is Pat Jacy. I live at 531 Poplar Street. We've lived here since 1967 and would like for you all to stop bringing up Mike's performance over and over again. It's such a waste of our taxpayers' money to have these meetings and go over and over and over again. Mike has done a great job for our city as far as I'm concerned. He has worked on our budget, and I think we're in better shape than we've ever been. And he has made our town, trying to get our town to where we can be proud of it. I went to the doctor's office today in Bristol. The doctor asked me where I was from, and I told him I was from Mount Carmel. And you know what he said? Oh, that's where your city government has a problem. How does that make you feel when you go somewhere and you state, it's terrible? I would love for you all to start working together, for all of us to start working together, and have a town that we're proud of, and we can say, I live in Mount Carmel, Tennessee. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else?
Changed my mind.
Change your mind. Anybody else? Well then, okay.
I'm Jim Bond. I live on 534 Spruce Street. We moved here when I was 9 years old, 1955. Of course, I've been gone for a while, but I've been back in Mount Carmel for 28 years. And I think Mr. Housewright has done a good job. Like she said, you go somewhere and they say, where are you from? Mount Carmel. I'm sorry about what you get. And it's an ongoing thing. And he must be a glutton for punishment, because if it been me, I told him before to take the job a long time ago and where to put it. Y'all gonna say.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. If we'll move on now, and, any old business? There's none. So our new business, we need to discuss and accept the FY 20 financial audit.
So I'm gonna, well, I guess we'll bring it to the floor first, my apologies. You wanna bring it to the floor?
Yes.
We have a motion on that?
And I'll second.
So, I'll read Mr. Ellis's, audit letter that he sent to us. Dear officials, I regret that I cannot attend your regularly scheduled board meeting this month. As a substitute, I offer the following comments that I would make if I could attend in person. Number one, I have completed the audit of the financial statements of the town of Mount Carmel for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2020. As a result of that examination, I have issued a clean or unqualified opinion on the statements. That tells you that the statements present fairly the amounts and disclosures, or footnotes, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Number two, as a part of an audit performed in accordance with the generally accepted government auditing standards in the Yellow Book, we study and evaluate your system of internal accounting controls to determine if there are any weaknesses or areas of concern. We issue a report, pages 60 and 61 in the packet that you've been given, on that effort to identify any deficiencies or areas for improvement that we see. For this fiscal year end, I am happy to report that there were no internal control issues noted that either need correcting or strengthening. Number three, also, as part of this audit, and the same report described in number 2 above, We search for non-compliance with various laws and regulations, as well as internal policy violations. We found no instances here either that need to be reported to the board. Number 4, at year end, the general fund reported assets of $8.5 million and liabilities of $1.5 million, leaving a net position of $7 million. The sewer fund reported assets of $7.8 million, liabilities of $300,000, and a net position of $7.5 million. For the fiscal year end, the town's general revenues were $2.9 million and expenses were $2.1 million, for an increase in net position of $800,000. The sewer fund reported revenues of $970,000 and expenses of $740,000, for an increase in net position of $230,000. This basic information is what I would report to you at the board meeting. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, David M. Ellis.
Good job, Penny.
Thank you.
So, do I, have a motion to accept this? Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The next is, the discussion and the consideration of the city manager evaluation. I have asked Mr. Pat Harding to come and speak before we go into this, and he's the management consultant at, CTAS. And so if you'll come, Mr. Harding, we appreciate you, telling us what we need to do and what we don't need to do.
Okay. Well, is it okay if I stand right here, because I don't want to have my back to anybody? But yeah, I came, Pat Hardy, my office is in Johnson City. I've worked with MTAS for 32 years. I'm in my 32nd year, and worked with Mount Carmel for 25 of those. So I've been up here at meetings like this with y'all many times. What I came prepared to do was talk about your form of government, answer any questions you might have or any technicalities about it, who's supposed to do what. I have copies of something that I had handed out to you, I guess a few years ago. I did a brief summary for you about it, and I brought some copies of that for some new folks that may not have been here there, that talk about some of the pros and cons of the various forms of government, strong mayor versus council administrator. I brought a copy of your charter in case we need to refer to that when we talk about roles and responsibilities. But let me just say this as a flying at 50,000 foot thing. One of the heroes in the field of public administration years and years and years ago was asked which form of government, which structure is the best. And his answer was, that which is best administered is best. In my opinion, you've got an excellent form of government in the council administrator form of government, because it emphasizes the administrative side by having a trained professional in that seat and a structure that moves to that professional. It's the exact same structure that built America. It's the exact same structure that General Motors has, that U.S. Steel has. It built this country. General Motors has a group of stockholders. That's these folks. They elect the board of directors. That's you folks. They appoint somebody to build cars. That's that person. And they hold that person to the bottom line of building cars. They don't get down in there and mess around in the different divisions about it. They tell them, you return 12% to the stockholders every year or we're going to replace you, period. And by you, it could be anybody. It doesn't make any difference. They hold that same standard to everybody. So you have the form of government that built this nation, okay? But a key thing a dynamic that I sense is going on here now, this form of government will not work if the person who's the city administrator doesn't hear a single voice coming from this board. If he or she hears 7 voices, you'll have chaos. And my sense of it is that there are way more than one voice that's speaking to your administrator. And when that happens, the ship is going to come to a screeching halt, which is my sense of what's happened, because that person gets conflicting direction. They always feel under the microscope. Nobody can perform when when their job is constantly threatened. That's just all that there is to it. You will get the minimum from somebody rather than the maximum, because they'll spend all their time looking over their shoulder trying to defend themselves. So for the ship to move forward, you've got to hear a collective voice. Now, I don't mean vote for something that you don't believe in. Vote for whichever way you want. That's why we have a democracy and we have 7 of you on the board, because we know there'll be all kinds of different opinions about even simple things. But once that vote is taken, the way this system has to work is this administrative side then takes the result of that vote and puts it on the street. So once that vote is taken, even if you were on the losing side of it, you need to support it and move forward, because what you're really supporting is the democracy and the form of government. And when I see breakdowns happen among boards so much of the time, rather than speak in that single collective voice, if they're on the losing side of a vote, they hit the streets and coming in and out of church and in and out of Burger King and in and out of everywhere else. They badmouth it, they talk about it, it shouldn't have gone that way. Down breaks your collective voice, and then the system won't work, because the person who is in that chair doesn't know what to do. He's heard 3 or 4 different things. So I can't urge you guys enough. I think you've got a great form of government. I think you have a top-of-the-line city administrator. Am I friends with Mike? Yes, I am. Have I been to dinner at Mike's house or vice versa? No, we're not friends that way. We're friends as colleagues. But I'm friends with a lot of other people in this city as colleagues too. But I know and I respect, and I think you've got a really good setup. I think you have the right form of government, the right people in it, and so forth and so on. There should not have been silence when that audit was read. There should have been a standing ovation. That's an unbelievable piece of work. Tammy, credit for it. I heard somebody mention that and so forth. But so does the city administrative side. You've also plays a role in it. So does the new city recorder, also plays a role in it. It's a team effort on the administrative side, as it should be on the board side. So with that, and I know I'm sounding a little bit intense, and I don't mean it all to be that way, but I just want to reinforce. And by the way, I'll point out, driving up here, I thought, this has gone on for a long time. You can kind of separate form of government from the behavior that's happened up here over the years. Back when you had the previous form of government, the strong mayor form of government, there was all sorts of conflict, and collective voice wasn't heard from that form of government either. So this has gone on for a long time, irrespective of form of government. But with that, let me hush, and if you guys have any questions at all that I can answer about form of government or roles and responsibilities or all of that sort of thing, have at it. Let me say one other thing before I just pause there. The basic way this thing works is you've got politics and you've got administration. Politics, you guys should be deciding what you want to do and why you want to do it. Then you turn it over to administration, and they should put it on the street. If they don't, you got to hold their feet to the fire. And you usually do that at a meeting. But that audit says a lot, by the way. But you got to hold their feet to the fire. So you've got the what and why, and you have the how. The minute you start picking around into the how side of the equation, the ship will come to a halt, because all the how will start doing is defending themselves. You don't want them defending themselves. You want the ship moving. On the policy side, part of the hidden gold mine of the council administrator form of government is that because the administration is taken care of by trained professionals, the council gets to focus on policy. And I'll ask you some key policy questions just to give you a sense of what I mean and what your job is. Let me see your list of your top 10 goals that you want to achieve over the next 5 years. Do you have that? You haven't been doing policy. Where do you want to be in 3 years? Where were the questions that you should have had about that audit, even though it was a perfectly clean audit? Still, there should have been, on page 36, I'd like to know why the expenditure for the senior center is $36,000 instead of $30,000. What are the measures that you use to make sure that what you passed in the budget, which simply reflects into numbers, services, and what level you want to provide them? Where are your questions at these meetings about the budget and whether or not the administrative side is implementing that budget the way that you passed it? Is that the way that you frame your questions at your meetings? If not, you're not doing policy, because remember, that budget is yours and it's policy. So I ask you those questions not to be insulting or even a little bit redundant, but to just give you a sense of the power of dividing the political part of the system from the administrative part, because if you do that, the political part can take over and can start talking about where are we going and why do we want to do what we want to do, and then they can turn it over to the administrative side and say, how are we going to get there? You get us there and I'll hold your feet to the fire. That's basically the way that this system should work. So let me pause there and just answer any questions that you might
I have a question.
have. Okay.
You were telling me that our city has done better the last year and the last 3 or 4 years than we have in how many years? You went back and seen was like 25, 30 years.
Well, I've been coming up here for 25 years.
And I asked you also, I said, well, once taxes go up, and we had to go up on taxes here before any of us got in here. And I said, have you ever, we've done so well this year that your property taxes will drop this time. We were at 3-something before Mike came along. Then and right as he came along,
if I can interject right there, before everybody gets too excited. The property taxes should hold at the same rate, or your property tax should be the same this year as it was last year. Now, the rate of the tax has dropped. It dropped from 169, I believe, to 138, and that was due to property assessment, property reassessment, and an increase in property values. And when you see an increase in property values, then the state adjustment board comes back and adjusts that value so that everybody's property taxes stays the same. So I wanted to put that out there.
So, okay, but we haven't seen that like that in the past as far as we've just saw so many good balancing in the last, how long have you been here, 4?
4 years in November.
Okay, and so we've not went in a hole, not one time, we've not overspent, we have wonderful people who run the department heads, and he leaves it up to the department heads to hire, or tell who he needs to hire, because they know more than what he knows over in these departments. And so that's what I like about him too, is he leaves it up to the department heads, but they come and they discuss it with him. And so we're doing well of keeping our people too. We've got some of the best workers right now we've ever had. And I thank you for it. I thank him for it. Anybody else have a question?
Oh, yes, I do. Which form of government is most popular right now?
Is most popular?
Yeah, the strong mayor or the city manager? From what you see, what style of government is more people changing to?
Yeah, I'm going to give a qualifier statement before I answer your question, okay? or let me just answer it and then I'll tell you why. There are more strong mayor forms of government than any other kind in Tennessee. Okay? There's 345, but there's a reason for that. There's 345 cities in this state. There's only 88 of them that are above 5,000 in population. Okay? The vast majority are really small. I mean, think Newport, Newmarket, think Parrotsville, think, Pittman Center, think Bailey, most of them are really, really small. I mean, hundreds of people, or under 1,000 people or so. What's the population of Mount Carmel? 5,000 range. The vast majority of cities, excluding the big four, above 5,000 in population would have the council manager form of government. Now, that's not to say there aren't some. There still are some like Lebanon that still have strong mayor, but they're very rare. Pardon me?
Bigger cities.
Yeah, in Tennessee, the big four don't have a council manager form. And most other, I shouldn't say most, but close to a majority of large cities around the country do. But even a city like a Knoxville, that cannot be run without some real horsepower running it. The mayor, you can't rely on the mayor to do that. He or she in this case, just doesn't have the training. So the mayor has around them a set of assistants that are highly trained public administrator, city manager types. So even the largest cities, although they don't have a manager, still have those people on board. But anyway, between 5,000 and that larger group, you got mostly managers.
And with a strong mayor, who basically does what Mike does now?
The mayor.
The mayor does.
Mm-hmm. So if you had a strong mayor form of...
Like I said to you once before, I started out business in college, and when we got to all that math, I said, I can't even keep my own checkbook balance. Must live in a city with millions and millions and millions of dollars.
What would MTAS do if it is switched over? What kind of help will we get from y'all?
Well, I mean, our job is to come in here and study things, help you fix an issue, and teach you how to do for yourself what you need done. We can't come up here every year and do your budget if you have, it doesn't matter who. I shouldn't point to an elected mayor. If you changed your form of government, there might be a mayor that can do a budget, I don't know, or that can't, but we can come up here and help, but we can't come up here every year. There's too many, we got too much to do. We can come assist, but that first or second year, you need to learn how to do it on your own. So we'll assist you. I mean, we're not going to leave you in a hole. Our job is to come up here and help you. But is our job a lot easier with a council administrator form of government? You bet, because you already got somebody who knows how to do a budget. So.
Well, see, even we've had mayors, but we still had, they've had good bookkeeping or whatever Tammy was called. Anyway, if it wasn't for her and Miriam, they would have gone in the whole way before they did.
You're exactly right. I mean, you can get people who can keep the system going in spite of it.
And see, we've got Mike, and we've also got Emily. Both of them have a degree in what all this math and stuff is, all this management. So we've got a powerhouse.
I've always said that one of the criticisms of the strong mayor form of government is that it's subject to the whims of democracy. And democracy is, somebody once said, it's the best form of government or the worst form of government in the world. It just so happens to beat out every other choice. And what they really sort of mean by that is it's not perfect. I can point to 100 times in Tennessee where really incompetent mayors have been elected. I mean, you may have the good people cancel each other out and they're in the middle with somebody. I can show you all kinds of horrible circumstances because you put somebody in charge of a multi-million-dollar system. What is your budget here approximately in millions? $2 million budget, something like that. Your balance sheet said your assets of 8.5 million. That put somebody that just didn't know how to do it in charge of a multi-million-dollar system with however many employees you've got. Those things are less important than the fact you still have to deliver police services and streets and Parks and Recreation, and on and on and on goes the list. Water and wastewater and so forth. And from where I'm sitting, I've seen the times when the democracy has not worked and put the right person in there as mayor. Mayor, you just said you had a business degree.
No, I don't have a business degree. I
Oh.
went into education after that.
Oh, okay.
I said, I don't
Well,
want none of this business.
any-
Give me my deaf students.
Anyway, the point I was going to make was, occasionally you get a really qualified mayor, and that's fantastic. The system can work. But I'm here to tell you, you take the best structure in the world and put people in it who can't get along together or don't speak together or don't know how to operate as a team, it's doomed to failure regardless of what structure you have.
I don't really necessarily have a direct question, but you care about to speak about the impact on the employees between the two different sides, between the strong mayor and the council manager?
Great question. The difference between employees and the strong mayor versus council manager. It takes some years for this difference to really show its face, okay? So please understand that, and you'll understand when I tell you. The strong mayor form of government is a politically driven system, okay? And if I'm an employee, I'm beholden to, because he or she can hire and fire me, I'm beholden to a politician. I don't mean that in a negative sense, but they're elected, okay? So the system tends to be politically dominated. My existence depends on who I know, not what I know, who I know, and how good is the relationship between them. On the flip side, council administrator, what I know drives the system. You hired this person based on what they know, not who they know. And that trickles its way on down the system. When Mike replaced Tammy or replaced the city recorder or any other position in the workforce, he did it based on, I know this because he called me. Do you have any draft interview questions you can give me? Can you come help us do an assessment center process to help hire an employee? He used expertise to hire that person. Those people were hired based on what they know, not who they know. That's a huge difference in the system. Now, the reason I said it takes a long time for it to trickle its way down is your administrator doesn't just go firing everybody that works here and now suddenly hire brand new people based on what they know. Everybody stays, and as they retire out or replaced, however it works, when someone new is hired, they're generally based on what they know. But I can guarantee you, in the or the strong mayor form of government, every employee lives and dies by the next election, because it'll scare the absolute tar out of them who's going to be their boss.
And they're worried right now.
Because they have no idea. When you have a city council administrator form, you know who your boss is going to be, so the next election, you're insulated from it. That person in that seat is sandwiched in the middle. That's why it's so stressful. But does that answer your question? Okay.
Anybody else want to ask him any questions?
Well, this is as part of the evaluation goes. Are we talking specifically about the evaluation that we're doing?
Yeah, I was gonna run it down.
I have questions about that specifically, but not overall position.
I didn't give you my mind scale, and I don't want this, that's fine.
And I was gonna, I will,
So
you want to take the lead? Okay.
So I'm going to back out and step out in the hall for just a minute, but if y'all don't have any more questions, because I know that's being done by somebody else at MTAS who's really good.
Yeah.
She's a really good HR consultant working with the city attorney. So the only flag that I'll throw up is, and it would be a request to all of you, please, times 10, be honest on the evaluation. What happens when you have a divided council is somebody doesn't like the administrator and they think, you know what? So-and-so's going to vote really good for him because they do like him. So I'm going to give them all 1s because I know they're going to give them all 5s. In other words, you weren't honest because nobody gets all 1s and nobody gets all 5s. So be honest and you'll have an evaluation worth looking at. But if you're not honest, if you try to cancel each other out, you won't have something that's a good tool for you. All right,
Thank you, Pat.
thanks, y'all. Y'all feel free to holler any other time I can help.
Okay, so, we met with an HR consultant at the workshop, and she went over the evaluation process. And I realized today, as I was preparing to come to the meeting, that I had intended to leave the form in the box of people who weren't there at the workshop, and I just forgot to do that. So I brought extra forms for those individuals. I know that, Trish, you weren't there. You weren't there either, so.
John?
Yeah, so I have forms for you, and I'm not forgotten you, but we gave out some of the forms at the workshop for people to take with them. I guess what I really want to do is, one thing we have to do is have y'all vote on conducting the evaluation. I think that's important. As a part of the severance agreement that was entered into earlier in the year, it had stated that we would conduct an evaluation. And it's been a long time coming, but I consulted with Betsy Cunningham at CTAS, and she and I, settled upon a form to use. We looked at several different options and thought that this was the most comprehensive one. And what it does is it gives you 10 separate categories of job performance. And then within those 10 categories, there are subcategories. And it asks you to rate those subcategories from 1 to 5, like you mentioned, with the numbers representing 1 does not meet expectations, 2 improvement needed, 3, which is right down the middle, meets expectations, 4 exceeds expectations, and 5 outstanding performance. And then at the end of this checklist, essentially, there's a page of questions that, or really just, it's the categories themselves, and ask for comments. So if you have written comments, you can fill them in there. In addition to the paper forms, I also have a link where you can fill this out online. I really had the link prepared because what we envisioned, we thought the best way to get a full picture of the totality of the job is to have the board conduct an evaluation, and then to have the employees conduct an evaluation separately. So then we would have these 2 sets of data, right? The board's evaluation will be provided to me, and then I will provide it to Ms. Cunningham in Knoxville, and she will collate all the scores, and then give us back, what the average is amongst the board, so that we can see how it breaks down. Now with the employees, the board's evaluation, I guess the forms that were provided previously had an option to place your name on. The form I have today is anonymous. Y'all are free to do whatever you want. I think it probably is more helpful if you do include your name so that we know where everybody's at.
But nobody sees them but you.
Right. As for the employees' forms, all of the employee evaluations will be completely anonymous. I plan to meet with the employees, with y'all's blessing, this coming Tuesday, to either provide them with a form or solicit an email address from them so that I can send them the link to conduct it online. When I give them the form, I'm also going to give them a self-addressed envelope to the law firm where I work. So they will come to me. I will either send the paper copies to Ms. Cunningham, or the link goes directly to CTAS. So they'll have that data immediately. I'm pledging right now to keep that completely confidential for the employees, so that no one will see them but me. And they won't have names on them, so I won't even know who they're from. And in case, and this is something that I will repeat to them as well, they won't end up going in a file for the town, so that there's no way to look at handwriting or anything like that people might be concerned about. And if need be, CTAS can keep the paper forms, or if they return them to me, I will place them in a file in my office where they will stay and collect dust in perpetuity. Because that's how we do it. So, if anyone has any questions about how the process works, I'm happy to answer those if I can. And then at the conclusion of any questions, I guess I would like for y'all to vote to conduct the evaluation. The timetable, here's another thing, the timetable that I've got my fingers crossed for, and I think that we can hit, is that we can have all of the evaluations conducted and returned in 2 weeks, right? So that around the time of the workshop, I can get them sent off to CTAS for review and for compilation of whatever final report they have, or they come up with. And then, once we have that data, the raw data, the 2 sets, we will discuss it at, I would hope, the October meeting. That is my idea or my goal for how this should work. I know that the best laid plans always go awry sometimes, but in my mind, I think that is a ambitious but not overly ambitious timetable to get this conducted and completed. Now, it'll require some administrative help to get this meeting with the employees on Tuesday morning, which I'm just going to spring it. I imagine that doing that as early as possible is a good idea, like 8 a.m. Just me and the employees, or I may bring Ms. Cunningham if she is available as well to answer their questions. And we'll do it in a room, nobody else there. That way they can feel free and comfortable to take a form or to give me an email address and not feel like they're looked over their shoulder. So with all that said, what are y'all's questions?
Is it a roll call vote, or we just don't know?
Well, I mean, I don't know, I just want to make sure nobody has any additional questions. I mean, you mentioned Alderman Gibson that you got.
Yeah, I've got one question, as far as the board goes. I really don't like that even being honest.
No, I mean, and I think that, like I said, I think it's good for the board to have their names on theirs, because ultimately you are the decision makers. But what I really meant to say, why I was saying that is because the forms that I have tonight don't have an option for your name, so just write it wherever. But I do think that it's integral to the process that the employees' evaluations be anonymous, because for one thing, we want honest answers from the workforce. And the reason, and I didn't say this earlier, the reason I think hearing from the workforce is important is just because they have a different perspective, and they interact with the city manager in his position in a different way than the board does, And so it will inform your position as well, in my mind. I think that's possible, that this differing perspective could be helpful, so that you see what the people that are under him believe or think, or the areas that they see that need improvement, or the areas that they see that are good. So that's something that I think is very valuable to the board's consideration.
I think it's not lost to say that evaluations are normally done pretty annually just for coaching type options.
It's very true, and that's something Ms. Cunningham said, is that, in an ideal setting, we would revisit this next year. And you would look at the numbers that were posed this year versus you transpose them with the ones next year, and see if areas that were stellar have gotten worse, or see if areas that needed improvement have improved. And I think that's a healthy way to look at this process. So, with all that said, do we have a motion to conduct the evaluation, for me to press forward? Because it's going to take time to do. So,
I do have one other question, and you might not know the answer to this, but any approximate guess on the cost of this?
I really don't know. I tried to tally up what I've done thus far, and I think it was around like 7 or so hours total, organizing within tasks, reviewing forms, determining a proper method for conducting this, how to meet with the employees, how to make it anonymous, etc. And then,
you still have a ways to go before this is completed.
Some, yeah. I mean, I think that at this point, the bulk of the work is done. Because really, it's all it's gonna be is a meeting, receiving stuff, and then sending it off, which should not take very long. So, with all that said, you made a motion, Mr. Gilligan? So we got a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right,
All
and
in
then,
favor?
I mean, we can roll call, it doesn't matter, if we think it's gonna close.
Alderman Mindy Flushour,
Yes.
Alderman John Gibson,
No.
Alderman Jim Gill,
Yep.
Alderman Stephen McLean,
Yes.
Alderman Darby Patrick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Teresa Mock,
Yes.
Mayor Pat Stillwell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next in line is discussion and consideration of the city manager's job duties, and Alderman McLean brought this up, so I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I guess I got cornered as the virus bad news. I had COVID a month ago, so I'll probably cough, but anyhow.
You had, what did you say?
I did, I
Oh, I
tested
didn't know.
positive.
I thought it was
on
your
my job.
daughter.
But, I really don't know how this got stirred up as big as it did. You know, I'm kinda straightforward. If I was going to put on there to fire Mike, I'd put it on the agenda to fire the city manager. I did send Mike an email and asked him to put on the agenda exactly what's on there right now. He sent me an email back and said if I was gonna vote on anything or make a motion on any, it needed to be in detail. I don't agree with that, but that's beside the point. So I'm gonna tell you what's just on my mind. There was several people contacted me over which I know we missed the meeting. I was out at workshop, I missed out on all that, I don't know what was discussed. But there've been a lot of people. I've talked to them now, different citizens, and, you know, we've had some heated issues at some of our previous meetings. And here's some questions that I have for the job duty. One of them is we was in the Sunshine Law talk. I feel like, and Mike, I want you to respond to me, you know. I feel like in one of the meetings where we was talking about the Sunshine Law, that there was some issues done with removing the lights and maybe a curb. I feel like you represented a employee on a citizen's matter. I don't feel like that should have been your job there. I mean,
Well,
go ahead.
if you'd like for me to respond?
I would.
All right, that matter, I did not represent an employee or a citizen on an employee issue. That matter was brought before this board, a letter was written, or a letter was read, and I responded to the letter. Okay?
Okay, and this is just something that I've observed today. And it's really not no issue, but I'm just bringing this, something I've seen going on. Does the sewer plant employees, what time do they start to work?
I believe 7 o'clock.
The sewer plant service truck was sitting at the gym at 8 o'clock this morning. I've seen it there several times over the past few weeks. I've seen it go to Kingsport at 11:30. I assumed the guys was going to eat.
Well, if I can respond to that, that's the first that I'm hearing about this, and I really think that, I would like for us to have a open enough conversation about if this occurs, maybe you bring it to my attention outside the board meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, I just have one question. What day was that? What day when you saw him driving that truck?
It was at the gym,
This Thursday?
yeah, this morning.
This morning?
No, wait a minute. Now, this COVID thing, It was in the last 2 days.
Okay.
Yesterday, I seen going toward Kingsville. Me and Mike will talk about that later. And that leads me to the sunshine law issue. That's been a heated discussion, fussing, whatever over the past. I don't understand Mr. Peavy explaining how the sunshine law works. I don't understand you putting it on the agenda for a workshop and a meeting and calling individuals out in public meeting over it, and it wasn't a sunshine law violation anyway.
That's correct.
There has been nobody said that they had been in the wrong, and it's none of our place to say that they're wrong until they're proven. You know, we're innocent until proven guilty.
I would like to answer this. Because of the harassment I have received, I went and talked to another lawyer and discussed the situation with him. He provided me with numerous examples of where people had been accused and were not guilty. He told me I was not guilty. He said, I cannot represent you because Mr. Peavy is your attorney. I have been harassed by my housewife for some reason I do not know. But I was told months ago that they wanted to take me out and put John in as vice mayor. And I thought, well, I know he's extremely talented with computers, but I thought he can do the same thing as an alderman. I was really confused, and I still didn't pay any attention to it. But this person kept saying, they're gonna take you out, they're gonna take you out. So I called them CTAS, and this was before I got sick in May with COVID.
Can I ask one question real quick? Does this person have a name?
I'm not telling you that, John.
I'm just asking.
I want an apology from you here in a moment. Anyway, which after you have COVID, your mind doesn't seem to flow like it
It
used
don't work
to.
like it used to.
It does not, that's the truth. I forgot what to say. Where was I at? I forgot. Oh, anyway, so I was embarrassed. But I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I called him CTAS and I said, I don't know what's going on, and I'm sorry to take up your time with something so trivial and silly, but can this be done? Because I didn't want to be slapped upside the head and unprepared. And the lady said, I don't know, I'll check your charter. So she talked to Mr. Peavy, which that was embarrassing to me also. I thought the whole situation was embarrassing. And she called me back and she says, by your charter, I can't tell whether this can be done or not. So I let it go. And then it continued on and on. Accused me of violating the sunshine law, which I am not guilty, not one time. John Gibson put on Facebook that I had violated it because I had been sitting there with Darby. Darby was doing the talking, I was just sitting there. I'm not guilty of anything, so you owe me an apology, John. So it was Al Darby's fault.
Yeah. Can we define one more time?
Hey,
what
man,
it
do you
is?
want to talk about something and see if we get involved in it?
Can we define
I'm
what
just
city
sitting
business
here.
is, and can we define what's not been voted on, so therefore there can't be a field trip, as we call it, out there without public notice? It's not that hard.
No.
You know,
Mr. Peavy.
there, I will say, and this is, in some of the AG opinions you provided, they did perform site visits, very true. And they were deemed not to have violated sunshine law, agreed. And we met and discussed this together. And I think one of the things you told me at the meeting, which I thought was very important, was that when you met with the attorney, they had said to you that that one or two words said wrong can get you in trouble.
Yes.
And that is the problem. It is very close. It's just a fine line that's hard to delineate. Now granted, I'll be honest, my administration of Sunshine Law is gonna be, it's always gonna be really conservative, because A, the town has had so much trouble, right? And it seems like trouble just finds a way to glom onto the town, for whatever reason. And so, I think it's best if we're gonna take a visit somewhere to announce it. Just because there's no way that you end any potential impropriety by notifying the public that they could be there, right? Then there's no way that these conversations could be conducted. Now granted, the trip to the sewer plant, if you had made such a trip, it wouldn't in and of itself have been a problem. The question is, if anything is discussed while you're there, that somebody could later say was deliberation towards a vote.
Well, Pat and I didn't discuss anything that day, did we, Pat? No, I didn't discuss nothing about it.
Well, and I agree, that's what I'm saying, like, if you go on a site visit, you observe the site, you hear what the consultant or the worker has to say, you go home, we're going, no problems.
How about the former husbands and wives we had on more previous, how did that work out? I mean, every guy's off there.
You're essentially on like an honor system. I mean, there's no way to police that, you know what I mean?
Shouldn't be husband and wife all night.
And I've discussed it with MTAS.
Yeah.
I discussed it with them at the time, because I was concerned. And, you know, their guidance to me at that time, and this is right after I'd begun, right when I started, it was 6 years ago, right? I called them up, and I'm green as, you know, the grass outside. I had no idea what I was doing at that point. And I said, look, this is kind of worrisome to me. And they said, well, you know, there's no way to police it. It's not above their house, right? The only thing you can police are the things you know about. And so, I don't disagree with you at all. That you've not, there's been no conversation that is a clear violation that we could get sued on, in my mind right now, that's gonna bust us, right? But it is, especially given the fact that it's been magnified and the fact that the town does have a very litigious history, I do think it's important to err on the side of caution.
But my account's right, had no business bringing it up over and over and over again because nothing was done that was incorrect.
Vice Mayor, if you will go back and revisit the meetings, I never actually accused you of sunshine law violation.
Why was it on the agenda?
Those discussions were headed up, Vice Mayor, if I can have your attention. Those discussions were headed up by the city attorney. I haven't made accusations
But
against
who put it on the agenda to begin with? Who put it on the agenda?
I'm not trying to
You're fine.
The general sense was that there had been sunshine law violations that occurred, and the remedy for the sunshine law violation is to have the discussion publicly, therefore it goes on.
That's the problem, is that in the event that it is violated, the only way to fix it is to get up here and have the conversation again, right? And to say everything that was said at that time on the record in public. And if you do that before they sue you, then you're good, right? And I'll be honest, I don't remember who made the decision to place on the agenda, but the point remains. And I know at one time, Alderman Gibson had brought it up. So I definitely drew attention to the sewer plant issue. That was me. And I called you ahead of time to discuss it. But after that, I honestly can't remember.
Wouldn't it have been easier to contact the person you think doing it and have a private meeting with them instead of bringing that public like this was?
It could be, yes. I don't disagree. I mean, it's possible.
Especially when you're not guilty.
But I think that brings us all back to our starting point, where our line lines of communication are all crossed, right? And I think that's something we have to fix if we're gonna be able to have those discussions, right? In the event that somebody, and I've got no problem calling you, I've done it. But it's not always my concern that needs, rectified.
My concern was, I thought we had a good enough relationship, like you just call me to the office and tell me what the problem was, and I've been done with it, none of this never happened.
Well, in the video itself, and I'll tell you the issue with the video, where you were speaking.
I explained to you exactly what's going on.
You've explained it to me, and your explanation makes perfect sense. The problem with it is that it was ambiguous, right?
That's why I said you could have let me know, tell me to your office, and we talked about it and been over with, no big deal.
So, I agree, I don't disagree.
And we just move on off of this.
Well,
Let me say one thing, John. We have, this is the fifth, this is the sixth meeting that this has been brought up. As far as the fifth go, fifth one, we have spent over $4,250 on us meeting this many times and nothing gets done. That's not counting, John's, when he goes over an hour, he gets more money. Okay, and I'm looking at the dollars because it's coming out of your pockets. And so, and that's not counting Mike. That's not counting all these policemen are standing back here. So we're wasting money and not getting anything done. Move on and let's get.
Never happened to begin with, never happened to begin with.
Well, that wasn't on the screen, so.
In regards to the sunshine law
Yeah.
and accusations, this, that, and the other, the last lawsuit that we just settled, would you not say to stretch that the reason why we settled it was because of there was no deliberation, there was a vote taken, everybody had their mind made up, there was no, the sunshine law potentially could have been. We're looking at liabilities. You've got a city manager, you've got professionals to discuss to reduce liabilities. And so in case it was, the sewer project, multi-million dollars, in case there was, it doesn't get violated, it doesn't get overturned in court. Like, it's not, it's the reason why we're reducing the liability of what people are doing and saying and trying to not be that litigious town that everybody tries to sue. It's you gotta try to reduce the liabilities, and when you're meeting with aldermen in places that the optics are, there's something going on. And that's when you win lawsuits, and can you?
well, I won't disagree that, recently settled the case, and, one of the reasons that, as I understand it, it's been told to me, so I wasn't at the hearing, but one of the reasons that the motion for summary judgment was not, granted is because there was not deliberation at the meeting, and so, the judge, he took that and he said to me, as the guy up there, nobody said anything, made a motion, they voted. It sounds to me like somebody said something when they weren't up there, because everybody was just ready to rip roar, ready to vote. And I agree that whether that happened or not, the appearance of potential impropriety can hurt you. Whether you're guilty or not, whether anything's been done wrong or not. Now, and this is something I will pledge to do as lawyer, as counselor for the town. In the future, and it's entirely possible that I've handled things poorly. I agree, it's possible. In the future, in the event that something like this happens, I will reach out to you ahead of time, like I did with the sewer issue. We can discuss it. Or if I hear that a violation has occurred, somebody believes a violation has occurred, we can talk about it. And if after having that discussion, we think it's pertinent or necessary or might be helpful to discuss it at the board level, then we'll do so. Is that kosher with everybody? I'm happy to do that.
Well, it beats me being dragged through the newspaper over and over again.
I said when we met, I sympathize with that. Because I understand.
No excuse. I would like to make the motion to drop this completely, don't bring it up again, because we are spending tax money left and right. Just think how much money that what we spent on this, that could been working on that sewer. So I'd like to make the motion to drop this and don't discuss it again, let bygones be bygones, and move on.
What are you talking about, the sunshine law?
No, what they brought up about trying to get rid of him and, all this.
Well, I mean, Alderman Plank still has
I've got
questions.
the floor on that if I'm not mistaken, and I've got one more thing.
Got a motion on the floor.
I think this has been talked about in the past, I think it's been discussed in the past in the past. I think the previous board voted on this, but the motion was not worded right to be feasible to do. So, this is a thing that I think this town should do. I feel it takes nothing away from our city manager or our department heads. So, here we go. I'm gonna make this as a motion, so we can open it up for discussion. I think the board should be involved in the hiring and firing as, I know this is Peter's wording, recommendation from and only the city manager and department. And any movement of any employee other than for emergency, if it's a permanent move. I feel like this is a safety net for an employee. The only thing the board will vote on is, just for instance, we hire somebody. Mike hires somebody for whatever, or a department head hires somebody. It will be presented a name, a position, and we'll vote on it to approve his recommendation.
We've got it now to where that when they turn their applications in, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, they turn their applications in, say for example, if it's over at the Public Works, he lets Jason look at those. And Jason really makes the decision if what he needs, he knows what he needs over there. And if they're qualified on what the jobs that he needs, and then it
Well, I
comes
mean,
back to Mike, and
that's
then, well, let
just
me finish. Then it comes back to Mike, and Mike, hires on the supervisors, they know more what they need and what
But
anybody
I
else
think
needs.
the board should be involved in that just to give the employees a secure, it will be nothing other than the board approving my decision.
Steve, is that a motion?
It is in a form of,
How many of you people out there think that?
Just you all vote, not us.
Motion.
Well, and I think that just, I wanna be sure that we don't have to have an ordinance on that. Because that, it is a hiring and firing issue, right? So I think that we do, because that's one of the delegable duties, from the mayor's powers.
that is the board decision whether to do that, because that's the way it was with previous administrations. All hiring and firing
That's why it
used to
didn't
be
work.
board approved. And I mean, I see people working in town, don't even know who they are. There you go, that's been here for 3 months, and we've not been told they've been hired.
No, you've got a second on that motion. He's got a second, and then we have a vote on it for discussion. You make a motion for discussion.
You motion for discussion, motion to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna make the motion, we'll have discussion for discussion.
To have-
I think the motion on the floor was to delegate those authorities to the board, not a motion to discuss.
Okay.
But it's not now, let's get to make sure this is worded right. It's not that the board's gonna make they're just gonna either uphold your decision or a department head, ever who, makes,
Well,
it's just to uphold it or deny it.
there's, I don't know whether it's best for me to weigh into this, for Mr. Hardy to weigh into this,
or whether it's best to have this unfold, this discussion unfold at the board level.
Well, let's go with Mr. Harding.
It-
Well, and
I didn't hear the motion.
Let me ask, before we get down the road, the motion is for the board to vote to either approve or disapprove of hiring and firing decisions. And
Is that right?
that's great, and I
Okay.
feel like that requires an ordinance.
Yeah, it would take an ordinance to do it, but I took it that the motion would just kick it into gear and you can go right to the ordinance.
Yeah, I think so.
Common under the council administrator form of government for the board to hire. Matter of fact, that's one of the 2 or 3 distinguishing characteristics of council administrator versus council manager. Think Kingsport, the city manager does all the hiring, the board has nothing to do with it. Think Sevierville, council administrator form of government. The board hires, the administrator lives with the hiring decisions. We already talked about one of the pros and cons, and I'll get to firing in a second. So, you're on to something. We talked about one of the pros and cons of that. Next thing you know, you're dependent, you're leaning back toward who I know, not what I know. Okay?
Politics
So,
is good then.
yeah, so I really like your idea of the administrator. In practice, I've worked under both forms of government, as an administrator and as a city manager back in my days. I never minded this, because in practice, the board would say, Pat, you go take resumes, use the criteria we've set out in the personnel policies, advertise, interview, all that stuff, and bring us the name. And they 90% of the time hire that name, because they didn't want to, they didn't want to interview 10 swimming pool attendants. You guys got better things to do. But where the rubber meets the road, you're responsible for it in the end, and on some key positions like chief of police or something like that, it does matter. Pool attendants, maybe not as much. So your idea of combining the two, having that recommendation be a formal part of the process and go to you. Another thing, I always felt like if the board were to turn down who I recommended for whatever reason, that's a little flag to me that I'm off the pulse with them, and I need to figure out why I'm off the pulse and how to get back on. So that half of your equation isn't common. Don't see it done very often, but under the council administrator form of government, you see the board hire really often. So that's that. Firing, that's a different matter. Don't take me as being sarcastic when I say this. If you want every relative of one of your police officers has got sitting in this room to fight you because you upheld the city manager's good reason for firing them, that's what you're in for. And I mean every relative. They'll have that room out there packed.
But in the long run, the board's still responsible, right?
Responsible for what? For the fire?
I mean, like, as far as the overall thing?
Oh, yeah, but you're delegating the firing responsibility. So the 2 things to be careful about are, if you have to approve what he recommends, that's kind of, that is a, sort of like a grievance procedure.
Right.
And that employee will have everybody they know in this room, and it'll be hot in here, believe me. So that's that one danger. There's one other thing I wanted to mention to you about that. And I'll probably think of it here while we're talking.
That's what happens when you get older.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, most of the administrators will argue, you can't hold me to the bottom line if I can't really put the team together to get us there. Oh, I know what it was. Nobody's gonna listen to him. If he doesn't have the firing authority or discipline authority, sorry, I'm friends and I have been for years with 4 of y'all on the board. I don't have to listen to him. that sounds silly and like an extreme,
I understand
but
that,
it's a real life, it's a real life thing. So.
But what you think it also gives an employee a safety?
Yeah,
How
okay.
would you, I mean, it would be like, I'm not saying favoritism, but instead of one person having your faith of working here, you've kinda got to hold the board, but the board cannot pick anybody out because it will only be brought to the board by the city manager or brought to him by the department head.
You're a logger by trade.
That's right.
Any of those loggers that you fired ever have an appeal beyond you?
No.
No.
But it
Otherwise,
takes the buddy system out.
well, well, let me say one other thing about the politics of it. Generally, the council administrator and council manager forms of government don't have the kinds of protections against politics that you find under strong mayor or weak mayor forms of government. That's because there shouldn't be, I mean, there's always personality conflicts and, you know, those kind of things, but there shouldn't be as much of that. And I mentioned it's gonna take time to get yourself to this point, but there shouldn't be as much of it under the strong mayor and weak mayor form of government is rampant. I mean, the whole system is driven by politics. So really, those decisions generally aren't made by as much politics as you think they are. I'm just
Well,
say
this,
that.
then when you're a city manager, it takes a lot of nepotism out of, like, for a mayor to be hiring his family or his friends.
So
or
the
whatever.
hiring side, like I said, the hiring side, I like the gentleman's idea is workable. But on the firing side, when I said that, I wasn't being sarcastic. Once again, I'm serious. If anybody ever had to get fired, they'll have this room packed on you. And they'll have your phones ringing 24/7 because they know that politics will work.
But you know, from my point of view, I've been on the other side of that fence. I mean, I got fired from this thing.
By a board.
By a board. It wasn't recommended. The board could pick any employee out that they wanted to and eliminate them. That is why my wording of this is only by recommendation from you or from a department head through you. I feel like it's
an idea.
a comfort
Work together,
zone
work together.
for the employees of the town.
Well,
And it's not only, I mean, it's not like you fired a lot of people in like we've been almost 5 years now. And like I was talking to Mr. Harding earlier, all the people that I fired in my past, I've been in supervision since I was 19-year-old. I've told every one of them, look back at what you done. You fired your state. And they've all agreed.
Hey, Steve, let me add one more thing and then I'll hush. You know, really, to fire somebody, okay, you gotta know about their performance. So, let me pick on one of the policemen out there. Joe,
Get back to now, that fire chief. Let's pick on him.
pick on the fire chief, why not? You know, you've got to know what John Q. officer is doing really on a daily basis to be able to fire him.
Right.
He knows because he's living with John Q. officer every single day, and he knows it's a little bit of attitude here, it's a little bit of problem there, it's being late a few too many times over here. It's a culmination sometimes of small things. It's not one big thing that you shot somebody in the leg you shouldn't have shot. It's sometimes a culmination of a lot of little things. I can almost guarantee you, none of you guys will know any of that because you're not here. You're logging. You're working on the festival. You guys are doing other things, and so that's why the administrator just has the adequate information generally to be able to fire somebody, and you guys don't, and yet you'd be upholding a firing based on the argument of a room filled with friends and relatives, and it's just gonna. I can just almost tell you, it's gonna. You're gonna regret that probably if you do it. But I understand 100% where you're coming from. A better way to put some protections in place is, what if you did it in your personnel policies and procedures?
Such as?
I mean, put in their criteria for hiring, put in, so that you guarantee that you get the type of person you want. There are a lot of cities that don't even advertise to hire. Put in there those types of criteria. For firing, I probably wouldn't put in more than just really general criteria, otherwise you'll have, the worst situation you can get in, and this is where this is leading, the worst situation you can get in is mediocrity. Somebody doesn't really step over the line enough to get fired. They just get close to it all the time, and it drives the mediocrity of the system down. Just not quite close enough. If a city administrator can just fire somebody for any or no reason, you can do something about that person. You used to have called, if you, is that thing on?
I thought you might be hungry or something.
There are some time, I know some places if you call, and some places that I've worked with, that if you called, this is what you'd hear. Hello, may I help you? In other words, I'm really sorry you bothered me. You've ruined my day. I have to put my Time magazine down and deal with you. It's attitude. You don't want that person working for your city, but they didn't really do anything wrong. Not enough that they could come in here and argue to the board and the majority of you guys uphold their firing. But the administrator would know that and should be able to get rid of that person. So that'd be the third thing I'd add to the equation. The walking the line of mediocrity, it would be an issue for you also. But
Well, the bad thing is, Tennessee is right to work state. You can fire anybody. I could fire you for not even coming at your time.
yeah, but you can put in place things that would prevent you from firing anybody anytime. You can give people a property right in their job if you want to.
Yeah, I just want to get some clarification. So you're wanting this position to cover the department heads, which we're defining as police chief, fire chief, public works, and.
No, this, wait a minute, I think you misunderstood. This will be, the way I want my motion understood is, you know, this will be either upheld or denied from the city manager. If the department heads are hiring or firing, you know, they bring that to Mr. Housewright. Mr. Housewright makes his decision whether to uphold their decision, and then he brings it to the board. That's the way we're not into the.
So you're wanting to rubber stamp what Mike's done, that's the way.
Well, no, not really. We're not into. We're not.
Some questions like, I don't understand the problem that we're trying to address here. Because the department heads, everybody's here, like, we're not addressing a problem. We have actual problems that we could be spending time focusing on, but we're worried about trying to take like one political position, make it more political position, and have power of the workforce.
Well, I've got a motion on the floor. Let's see what the board feels about it. I call for question.
I've already seconded it.
Oh, question.
I mean,
We're roll call.
I'm sorry, for the record,
Yeah.
would you mind to restate your motion?
I kinda got scribbled out here. My motion is to make all hiring, firing, and employee movement other than for emergency to be board approved from recommendation only from you.
Okay.
That's,
So now that includes transfer of personnel across the department. Does that include promotion?
if it's permanent. Say if you have COVID and you have to move some from public works to sewer. You know, that's emergency type thing. No, we don't need to make that call.
Okay.
But if it's gonna be a permanent thing, and the only reason I put that in there is so we will know. I mean, we can take that part out, the movement. If you will just agree to let us know when you're doing it.
Well, here,
He's a city manager, that's what his job is.
Yeah, but we're
I'm-
also here and supposed to be informed of what's going on.
Well, I'm gonna lay this out there, and it's not intended to be argumentative in any way. We're coming back to, you know, conflating, the duties of the city manager with the duties of the Board of Mayor and Alderman. There was a lot of discussion earlier about what the role and responsibility of the Board of Mayor and Alderman is in a council manager form of government, which is what we presently hold. And that is policymaking. And I will agree with Alderman Gibson. There is a lot of policymaking and a lot of forecasting into the future, and goal setting to be done. I do want to caution, this type of motion will bring this Board of Mayor and Alderman out of a policy-making role into an administrative role where you're involved in personnel decisions. I've officially, as city manager, I'm paid to make recommendations, and I'm gonna make one now. I discourage that. I don't know if I have ever vetoed a single employee hiring recommendation, and I think all of my department heads are here tonight. I don't know that I have ever vetoed one of their hiring recommendations. I don't do that because I have a discussion with them, and they are all welcome to disagree with me if that's ever happened. I hold Mr. Salyer, I hold Chief Lunsford, I hold Chief Byington accountable for the performance of their team. And because I expect them to be accountable for the performance of their team, I respect the professionalism and their ability to create their team. I give them a lot of latitude in the hiring because they are the ones that know where the deficiencies are on the team, not me. They know if they need we'll take public works, for example. They know if they need someone, or they could use someone with some construction experience. They know if they need another employee with CDL. And they know how that will impact the performance of their department. So you're essentially, and I want to be very clear about this and why I'm discouraging it. I've only, of all the people that's been hired in this city over the past 4 years, I've hired very few of them. You know, the only ones that I've hired are the ones that work closest to me. You're taking, with this action, with this motion that you're making, you're not taking the hiring out of my hands. You're taking it out of the hands of the department heads. And you're taking the ability for me to be accountable, or for them to be accountable to me for their performance out of my hands. So I want to be on the record for that. And it's not, that's all that I have. Did you want to, point of clarification, did you want to leave any kind of transfers in your motion, and does your motion in regards to any kind of move, I think it was movement, does that include promotion?
No, it does not include promotion.
Okay. But you do once they vote movement in, right?
Permanent movement from,
Permanent.
if it's from one department to another, you know, if it's just within the same department, you know, no, that's, but if you take somebody from the police department and put them to public works or put them to sewer plant or something like that, it's,
So what you're saying is that, for example, Jason tells him who he wants to hire. Then he can't hire unless he comes through us.
we will approve Mike's decision, approve or deny what Mike decides.
Just one point, Craig, on that, will be an ordinance, so if it passes tonight, we'll be talking about this next month for the ordinance, right? Voting on the meeting, so it'll be next month's meeting, we'll have to pass second reading.
You need overtime too.
Any further questions?
Tell Bobo I said you have to have overtime tonight.
Alderman Mindy Fleischauer? Alderman John Gibson?
No.
Alderman Jim Gillum?
Yes.
Alderman Stephen McLean?
Yes.
Alderman Darby Patrick?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Teresa Monk?
Yes.
Mayor Pat Stillwell?
No.
Motion passes.
You ready to go?
Okay,
We have city manager.
the, so next is the discussion and consideration of the city manager.
I put that on there just to make sure that I covered all bases when we can discuss stuff. I'm done as far as my part of it, if somebody else wants some kind of discussion or whatever, I'll step back and the floor can be whoever's.
You gonna leave it on there, Steve? You gonna leave it on?
You wanna withdraw it?
Whatever anybody wants to do, I'm not going to, I'm not making a motion or discussion on that.
So you wanna just drop this, is that what you're saying, Stephen?
Well, I think the board has the ability to weigh in at this
I
point.
mean, if anybody wants to weigh in on it, you know, feel welcome, because I just done that where I would make sure that the agenda.
I do want to weigh on a little bit, since it's gonna be, if it passes again next month, it will become public, open for discussion anyway. What are we addressing here? What's brought this on? Is there a specific instance of employees that you can talk about? Because, I mean, it's gonna be in the open to discuss, if we pass it again, we'll be able to bring every employee and discuss about it then, so like, what's brought this about?
So you have to discuss that again, Mr. John, is what we just passed.
Yeah, it's back on there, it's on there, it's under all the managers' comment, it's pretty vague, so I mean, that's in the
It's just been
duties.
voted on and passed, so it needs what happened.
Well, there's two things.
Draft an ordinance. Okay, I'll draft an ordinance. So does it have to be voted on again?
Yeah, we vote on
Right,
twice.
we gotta vote on twice. Ordinance. So,
I've got the wording down, so we'll go with that.
Is there any discussion on the, city manager item?
Anybody have
Well,
discussion?
Yes.
I
Yes,
do, actually. Today I received it was on the table, request for an ethics investigation, at least that's how I'm interpreting it, from Miss Brenda Parker related to the streetlight issue. I reviewed it, and I'm gonna be frank. I think, given the politically fraught nature of this, it's become far more political than it likely should have been. I understand that. But, you know, we have to work closely together, right? And so, my recommendation with respect to this is that the board instruct me to find a neutral third party to conduct this investigation. That way, no matter how it's decided, whether a violation of the town's code of ethics has occurred, whether no violation has occurred, whatever that determination is, because we have to work closely together, and I'm beholden to y'all, so, to some degree, you know what I mean? Whatever the outcome is, there can be no hint of bias either way as to how that outcome was determined. So, I know a number of attorneys that do governmental defense work that would be able to do this, and honestly, I think that that's the best route to go, so that the ultimate decision is beyond, I mean, I know, personally, I know that whatever I come up with will just be my take on it, right? But I don't want there to be anybody that could say that any sort of bias went into the decision. So I guess I would ask that the board instruct me to do that, to find someone to conduct this investigation, to provide them with this document, and that's it, and tell them to go to work.
And will this happen, like, if we ever get any other complaints about the city manager, just come to you and find a third party?
We can do that.
Hold on, question. How much is this gonna cost? Cause if we're gonna do that every time.
It's gonna cost a lot, it's gonna cost a lot either way.
Let's just start it
Yeah,
out.
I mean,
Start it out.
it's not gonna, it is honestly not, hopefully, it won't cost a lot of money, right? But I don't think it's gonna cost a significant difference whether I'm doing it or somebody else is doing it. They're gonna have to talk
So
to
does
some people.
it have to be a lawyer? Can you not, like, turn it over to him and have to let him do it?
I would have an attorney do it. Because they have to make it, because they're gonna have to look at the statutes and interpret them, and look at facts and apply them to those statutes, and that's what a lawyer's trained to do.
Let me ask you this,
Go ahead.
how long had that pipe been standing up there?
I have no idea.
Now, I heard for 20 years. Does anybody know any of them? Amy, you know?
It was up there a long time, turned towards Brenda's house. And when Gary Lawson was mayor, he told her what was going on, and she told him that she was paying for the light. And he said, you don't need to pay for the light, we'll turn it towards the street and we'll pay for it.
So they don't pay for my light.
So, well, if it's faced the street, what I understand, he gets paid for it.
But as
if
far as
it's
with
been
this
up there that
ethics
way, why can't we
complaint
just put it
filed,
back?
we have to do something. We can't say,
Well, and I just think that at this point, well, there are some times that you can be like, this is gonna be flip or glib, but you can be like, well, that's ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, if it's way out left.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, there's been so much about this to this point that it needs to just be investigated and put to rest one way or another, right? I think that that's the best thing.
I kinda feel like we put ourselves in the worst shape if we didn't have a third party to look into it. I think it would be pushed farther than we'd be willing to go with it.
Well, and I just, you know, I don't want, personally, I don't wanna be in the middle of it. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, this has been, like we said, this has been brought up how many times now? And I think that
So can,
you can make a motion to.
all right, make a motion, cause we gotta get, I mean, we're going
I
up 2
got
hours.
one more question. Why can't we go up there and go back to status quo? Turn the thing on light around. If somebody
Well, we
don't
can't-
like it, go buy them up a line. So here you go.
We can't, I mean, the board can determine they wanna do that, but we still have to deal with this, so. We got a motion, a second, can we have a vote on that?
Before we vote now.
A third party's gonna do this.
Okay, okay.
What's the motion?
Just, and this can just be a voice vote. So, Mayor, it's be a voice vote.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor? Anybody say no?
Passes 6-1.
All right, let's get on to this one.
Okay. Now, the next thing we got is discussion and consideration of resolution 21-608, is the surplus items.
Make a motion to surplus funds.
We got a motion and a second. Okay. All in favor?
What else on the list?
Books in the library.
Oh, the books.
Books on the library as well
Well, there's something else,
as well as fire equipment.
Wait a minute.
As well as some fire equipment.
That fire equipment is going to Volunteer High School, outdated. Is that correct, Jason?
Correct, it's been, if you all vote to surplus it tonight, it'll be given to the fire science program at Volunteer High School that we just started.
All right, so we got a motion and a second.
Wait a minute,
Yep.
wait a minute. This doesn't, it says, no material used in the department. I would like for it to be worded, fire department, be specific. And then it, see attached, which is the list of the equipment, and for it to be dated.
Okay,
Yes.
we can do that.
Well, and there's also library books involved in that.
There's books as well. on there.
Now, it says they're deleted. Does that mean they were actually on, you could read them on
On the shelf, yes, there are books that are up there that they have to get rid of so many books a year.
and when it said,
It was
they
probably,
deleted.
they're probably digital books.
That's what I thought, deleted. I thought
That's my
maybe
guess.
deleted.
Well, they usually will, a lot of them will be bought, the regular
Okay,
books
so-
too, when they send those,
We got a motion and vote, or a second.
Yes.
Voice
Okay.
vote.
what's that? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
Salt bids.
Salt bids, city staff, recommends, going with Compass, they are the low bid, for this is, 104.53. Others were higher, significantly higher, we had 3 bids, so that's staff recommendation.
Have we dealt with them before, Jason?
Pretty sure we have in the past, previous time,
Do they,
before my time.
do they deliver, or is it a contract delivery? I mean, is that might not even have been specified in the bid.
It's not specified, but I'm pretty sure they'll deliver for that price. They always have been in the past. I wouldn't see any other,
Well, that's who you recommend.
I would recommend the cheapest one, yes.
Make a motion, we accept that bid.
I second.
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay, now, the discussion and consideration of, this is up at the library, and they need, another person on the board, and they have to live in Hawkins County. And so April Sobach, which is the librarian to Mount Carmel Elementary, has agreed to come back on the board. And so, I guess we'll have to vote on that one and then vote on the changing of the time, right?
We do not have to vote on changing the time,
Okay.
just the nomination.
Okay, all right, so all in favor of?
We got a motion
A
second.
motion, yeah,
I make a motion.
and I second. Do we have to individual or all? All in favor? Anybody opposed? So, okay. Mayor comments, I wanna, say that Johnny Castle know that he is in our prayers, and, I hope he gets back to work really soon, and he gets better to a full extent. And thank you all for coming.
Alderman Moss, or Vice Mayor Moss.
I, would like to say I'm sorry to hear that Johnny's sick. He's, probably one of the best employees this town has ever had.
He's been with us 38 years now. 38 years.
Alderman's
Alderman.
comments.
I don't have no.
Stephen?
I just want to thank everybody that likes me on social media for just putting Mr. Housewright kind of on the hot seat. It was no intention at the time that I was going to fire him. I have tried in the past to make some things that I don't agree with the way he does, but that wasn't my intentions tonight. But I really like how people read into everything, you know, if you had the will to, you just call and ask me. I'll tell you, I'm a straight shooter. That's all I've got.
Yeah, I won't go back and recap just on a few things. You know, use the word embarrassing. I still don't think you ever really address embarrassing with Emily. You know, that's one thing I just want to, one point I want to make. Yeah, I still stand on everything I said. I still believe it. And, yeah, it's just more meddling in politics with personnel and more trying to affect day to day that'll continue us down the same road. And that's all I have.
No, sure.
I just wanna remind everybody that we've got this amazing fall festival going on this weekend from 3 to 8:30. We got bands, we got vendors, we got food trucks, we got fireworks, we got bounce houses. It's gonna be a great time and we're excited to see it. And t-shirts, we got t-shirts too.
Starts at 3 o'clock and it goes to 8, right? 8:30.
Nothing.
motion?
You. Nothing. I got nothing.
Make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Oh, yeah, hit the gavel, Mayor.